Our opponent plays Mana Flare, and oh boy, this is going to be fun. Playing Mana Flare and then letting your opponent untap with Mana Flare in play is incredibly dangerous. Hello and welcome to another draft by Chill MTG, and ding ding, we open up a Mox Sapphire. Super excited to start the draft this way. In the next pick here, we have a couple decisions we can go with. Since we opened the blue Mox, we could take the Preordain. I also like the Zealous Conscripts, but it's hard to turn down Library of Alexandria. It's just a land that does so much and asks so little for you. Here in pack 3, we're still open. We can go kind of any direction. With the blue Mox and a library that draws cards, I am considering the Upheaval. Other cards I'm looking at is the Oracle of Moldai. It's just strong. We could also go Chain Lightning, though Chain Lightning probably isn't a third pick. I'm not a Storm player, so I'm not going to take Yogg-Will or Brain Freeze, but we'll take Upheaval and see what the next packs bring. Pack 4, a lot of lands here for us to go either direction. I noticed the Godless Shrine, the Blood Crypt, and the Cave of the Frost Dragon. All lands I like. I also look at Nissa. Nissa is one of those cards that can really enable the green deck archetype. So I'm considering here just to see what's open. Really not committing either way. In this pack, I noticed there's really no red cards, and the blue cards are very light. Inspired Idea. Not really a signal. I do notice there is a lot of black, white, and green cards. So I'm a fan of Dismember because it can go in any deck. So again, we're still kind of staying open, and I'm trying to see how this draft solidifies. So notice again in this pack, no red cards, really no blue cards that are going to pull us there. No green cards really other than Hydroid Crisis. So we're seeing a lot of white and black come around. And this is influencing my decision. So I'm going to pick up the Scrubland, I think, here. Get in the deck Scrubland. I really like the white-black decks. And we're kind of rewarded here with Skyclave Apparition. Skyclave Apparition is one of those cards that can just deal with problematic threats at 4 mana value or below. Other consideration is Phyrexian Revoker, Stonecoil Serpent, just to stay open, but I do like the white card. And white-black's looking pretty decent. I see the Thraben Inspector. I just locked Tide on that. But then there's also a Tidehauler Sculler, which Tidehauler Sculler may be the correct pick here. But Team J-Bro likes the Thraben, so, you know, I'm going to pick up the Thraben. Still kind of trying to solidify what direction we want to go in. We have no black cards, as in Dismember is a colorless card. So I could go white-blue. So Sower is a consideration here. There's also a couple lands to look at, but I'm going to take Sower. It's a consideration for where we want to go. And then we get past Liliana, which is an insane black card. Zealous Conscript's also still good, and Ugin also still good, but I really like Liliana. It's very strong. Mother of Runes on the wheel means white is probably not getting cut. So our spec on Nissa does not appear to be panning out, so Nissa hits the board. But Batterskull can come in. It's a pretty decent land. Here's an interesting decision between Sun Titan and Shattered Sanctum. I've seen some games with Sun Titan just be broken, but usually those revolve around Black Lotus. So I pick up the land there, pick up the Wall of Omens, and then pick up the Stonecoil Serpent. So we're still trying to figure out if we're black or blue, and we're going to let these next packs help focus it in one of those directions. Pack 2, pick 1. Grizzlebrand staring us in the face, though I don't think we're quite a Reanimator deck. I'm eyeing the Grim Monolith, though I'm not necessarily... Grim Monolith is not the best card in a white-black deck, just because the white-black cards are not that expensive. Other consideration here is Brainstorm, Venser, if we want to go more the blue route. Now, remembering that pack 1, blue seemed to be getting cut pretty decent, so I do decide to pick up the Grim Monolith here. And then there's just so many lands in this pack. Strip Mine, Mutavault, Prismatic, Vista. A lot of things we'd like to pick up. And then Balance, which is an incredibly broken card. Oh, and by the way, there's a Ragavan. But we didn't really see red coming around in pack 1, so I'm not leaning towards the Ragavan. Balance is really broken. After just picking up a Grim Monolith and a Mox Sapphire, I'm very interested in it. And then here for our next pack, it's again some decision time. This was a really interesting draft. So you see me cut the Liliana there, and it's like maybe I'm white blue and I want to go get this Palace Jailer and wheel the Deserted Beach. That's at least what's going through my mind right now. But then when I look at my blue cards, Sower and Upheaval, like we're not really an Upheaval deck, and Sower is like okay, but it's nothing to hold us into blue. So after reviewing those cards, Liliana comes back in. I'm still trying to navigate this draft and see if we should be white-black or white-blue. Valky is an interesting card that we don't have red to cast Tybalt on the other side. I do also really like Brazen Borrower just because there's a lot of great interaction there. And then there's a Lingering Soul. So again, this pack not helping us solidify what lane we want to go in terms of signaling. So we kind of got to make a decision here since we're almost midway through pack 2, whether we want to be white, black, or white, blue. So I pick up the Lingering Souls. I know I'll be able to cast it pretty easy. And I'm really leaning towards the white, black deck now. Grave Titan is a great card. So that's going to hit the deck. And then we get past the Tundra. And I'm just like, come on. What colors am I supposed to be here? But I'm going to stay committed. We're going to pick up the Elite Spellbinder as some interaction against our opponents. And then we're going to continue on. Mana Tithe versus Student Warfare. I'm really not too impressed with Student Warfare. I think it's fine, but it's not great. So now that we've picked up some more white cards, we've picked up the Grave Titan, I'm comfortable cutting our 2 more mediocre blue cards. We get the Ophiomancer here, a Condemn for the sideboard, and we're very solidified into white-black now. Decision here between Archangel Avacyn and Giver of Ruins. So we already have the Mother of Ruins. So I'm leaning towards picking up the Archangel here just because it's kind of one of those flashy surprise threats that can really throw your opponent off guard as well as protect your team with its ability. Other considerations of Mutavault because in a white-black deck, creature lands really help in terms of keep pressure on your opponent after board wipes and that such, and they're harder to deal with. So that's why I went with the Mutavault there. Glad to see that we're in the right colors. Our Intrepid Adversary and Cathar Commando come on around, so we pick those up. A Ravages of War we pick up, and a War Strider we pick up, which hits the board though. So going into pack 3, I'm really confident in our color choice here between of white, black. So looking at this pack, the decision is between Hero of Bladehold and Kiteseal Freebooter. So do I need more top end or do I need more interaction? And I decide to take the interaction here. Mana Drain, that's an awesome card. But equally as awesome is we have Urza's Saga with our Mox. We have Verdant Catacombs to fetch up our Scrubland. We have Shriekmaw. There's just so many good choices here. So I'm trying to consider what's going to wheel. I don't think Urza's Saga will wheel. I don't think the Fetch Land will wheel. But I am a sucker for Shriekmaw, so I may be picking that one up here. Really interested to see what you think we should have picked here. I try to eat my vegetables a little bit, go with the Verdant Catacombs, consider it a couple times, and I was like, no, let's have great mana. It can fetch our Scrubland, so let's get in there. And of course, an Arid Mesa comes along, which we could have picked up this turn, but it is what it is. I love Gonti because Gonti can be any card. It's really anything, and so that quickly hits the main board. I think Containment Priest is an interesting card to have either in the main board or the sideboard. It can really mess with a lot of other combo-y decks strategies. Blade Spicer's fine. It's kind of filler. We already have a decent amount of creatures, but it's fine. And then here we're looking at Bob and Thraben and Walking Ballista. Now, I am not the biggest fan of Thraben just because it can hurt you as much. And so I'm doing a check here to see like how many spells do I have? A little too many. Let's go with Bob here. I'm happy to use Bob as a draw engine and get him in the deck. Stoneforge Mystic comes around because we do have the Batter Skull that can be fetched up pretty good. And you see I cut the balance here. We're not really looking like a balanced deck, even though I did pick up the Grim Monolith early. And we're just kind of rounding out with some pretty efficient white cards. Hero of Bladehold does wheel, so I really am happy about that. And that definitely hits the board, the main board. I also love Shriekmaw, and it wheeled there, so I'm happy that we didn't pick it up on its first go-round, so we can pick it up on the wheel. Bloodchief's Thirst, pretty good removal spell, but I'm looking okay for interaction at this point, and this is going to round out pack 3 and our deck. So this is how our deck ended up. We were running 16 lands plus the Mox, and it's a pretty decently interactive white-black deck with Skyclave, Shriekmaw, Dismember, Liliana. We do also have Ravages and Gravetide in here, so with some acceleration in that mock. So I'm happy with the way it turned out, and let's hit the games. All right, welcome to game 1. We are on the play, looking at our opening hand. This hand seems fun, and so we have all our colors of mana. We do have a turn 2 play. We can evoke the Shriekmaw if we need to, so we'll go ahead and keep and lead on the tap land. Our opponent opens up on a volcanic island with the wrong art, in my opinion, and then sees what we're up to with a Gitaxian Probe. I really like Gitaxian Probe. Knowing what your opponent is up to is actually pretty valuable. It's a free card because it replaces itself and can go in any deck because of the Phyrexian mana. It's a decent card. Here we'll pass through because our intention is to flash in the Cathar Commando at the end of our opponent's next turn. Our opponent fetches up an island and gets a Gruul Signet on the board. So here we're kind of faced with a decision. Do we want to blow up our opponent's Signet after we attack? It's something to consider. However, with the Mox Sapphire, we can get the hero a Blade Hold down this turn and actually apply a lot of pressure. This is why Moxen's so good. It's going to give us that 4 mana play on turn 3. Our opponent untaps, plays a Swamp, and then starts to cast a spell and then stops. So they definitely have something going on here, but I'm not too scared of whatever it's going to be. So we're going to attack with our creatures, make sure we order our hero of Bladehold trigger correctly with putting Battlecry on the stack first and get in there for a bunch of damage. In our second main phase, since there's no targets for the Shriekmaw, we're going to get the Batter Skull down and pass to our opponent. So our opponent casts Faf. The only card that does anything on this board is the Turnabout, so I'll do a 4-1 split because they'll have to take the Turnabout or some other answer. The Turnabout will at least get them one turn to tap our creatures down, and that's what they choose to take. I expect them to pass through their turn here since they want to have enough mana up for Turnabout next turn. And then they're just like, yeah, not enough, and they pass. And let's go to the sideboard. All right, in the board, we saw they had red, blue, black mana, Turnabout, Force of Will. There wasn't really a lot that I see in the board that we want to bring in. I do see a mistake here. I do see that we have Library of Alexandria in the sideboard, and that's probably an error because we should definitely be playing Library. Okay, this hand seems fine. Bob should be able to dig us to some additional cards, and our Verdant Catacombs can fetch our white and black source. Opponent leads on Volcanic Island again and passes with no plays. We draw a white source return, which is fine. We play our Verdant Catacomb, planning to fetch at the end of our opponent's turn. I do this play so in theory I can have double white next turn to play the Leon Relic Order in case our opponent plays an artifact here, which they do. Keeping your opponent off mana and resources is one of the most important plays you can make in the Vintage Cube. So our Leonic Relic Warder hits the board, we steal the Azorius Signet, and we pass the turn. Our opponent plays Mana Flare, and oh boy, this is going to be fun. Playing Mana Flare and then letting your opponent untap with Mana Flare in play is incredibly dangerous. I would not recommend it ever. So we have 6 mana available. 100% we're going to play the Skyclave Apparition, steal, and to exile the Mana Flare, meaning we get the benefit from the Mana Flare and our opponent doesn't. And that's just going to be a bad day for our opponent. We'll then get the Silver Blade on the board, pair it to the Relic Warder, and be ready to swing in for 4. But with our opponent losing Mana Flare, they quickly concede. Okay, we're diving straight into game 2. We have another hand with interaction in terms of Elite Spellbinder, all our colors of mana. Happy to keep this hand. Our opponent leads on a Noble Hierarch, and we draw a fetch land. So we'll just play a Plains and pass. Our opponent Green Suns for 2, fetching up Raphelos, which is kind of a problem. I don't have an immediate way to answer Raphelos, so we're going to have to figure out what we want to do for our game plan. I play the Mutavault here. It comes into play untapped, whereas Shattered Sanctum would not. And now the choice is between playing a Stoneforge Mystic or flashing in Cathar Commando. I'm hoping that our opponent chooses to attack Raphelos and I can ambush it with Cathar, but sadly that's not the case. They get an Acidic Slime on the board, blowing up our plains. In response, we're going to flash in the Cathar Commando and at least get some value out of it. So we're a little behind on board here in terms of mana. We'll have 2 mana next turn, and our opponent will have 8. Scrubland is the draw, which is okay. Our real only play here is to get Stoneforge Mystic on the board. I'm happy to trade with any of these creatures, so we get in with the Cathar Commando. The opponent trades with the Slime, and we get our Mystic on the board. We'll fetch up the Batterskull to our hand and pass the turn. All right, our opponent plays Terastodon on turn 4. Pretty good play there, opponent. This is why Raphelos is really strong. Blows up both our lands, again setting us back on mana and giving us 2 3/3s in return. Hey opponent, guess what? I still got lands in hand, so I'm not going to concede quite yet, but it's not looking great. Our opponent then casts Kogla, which can fight creatures. That I was trying to hoping to use the Stoneforge Mystic to flash out the Batterskull, but now the Stoneforge Mystic is dead. We are looking super behind. I decided to trade a token for token and take 9 from the Terastodon. Mana Tithe, not really the draw we were looking for there. I don't see any way out of this one, so we're going to concede the game. And that's the power of Raphelos. Going to the board, playing against the mono green deck. I want to be able to kill their mana-producing creatures, so Blood Chief's Thirst comes in, and Ravages of War does not look good at all, so that's going to get boarded out. So I do consider Oust here to remove, some of their larger threats that they could get on the board. Though I'm kind of unsure about that swap out. Relic Warder doesn't look good considering our opponent probably isn't playing artifacts in the form of signets since they're a ramp deck. And I decided to get balance in case our opponent floods the board with a bunch of creatures. Balance could be a decent answer. All right, we're on the play. Looking at our hand, both colors of mana. Gonna have to keep this one with a turn 1 Mother of Runes. No turn 1 plays by our opponent, which is good, I guess. We have balance in hand. This isn't really a balance attack, but a turn, so we're going to get in there with 1 for aggressive Mom. All right, there's our fellow. So now having Mother of Runes on the board looks super awkward because I totally would balance here just to get Rafellos off the board, but we can't. So let's get our Elite Spellbinder back down, see what's going on in our opponent's hand, and see what we want to exile. Not a lot going on, so they could Plow Under us next turn. So we're going to exile Plow Under from their hand to put attacks on, and Aggressive Mom gets in for another point of damage. If we draw a land next turn, we're 100% going to Palace Jailer the Rafellos. Our opponent plays a Nissa, fetching up a forest. And then they do have 3 more mana. So they get the Wall of Roots on the board. Really hoping to draw a land off the top here. We do not. Which means their Rafellos is going to stay active for another turn. However, with our 3/1 flower, we are able to get in there for some decent damage. Balance, again, not looking good, as we already have 2 creatures on the board. And I decided to play the Stormforged Mystic so we can search up the Batterskull. So our opponent can play Plow Under now through the attacks from Elite Spellbinder if they'd like, and that's what they choose to do. It's an interesting play from the opponent because their creatures don't attack very well, and I have a 3/1 flyer. So while it does set us back 2 mana, I am happy to, have that be their play. I know I'm going to draw 2 mana next turn, but so we're going to play that. We have the Stoneforge Mystic active now, so we can flash in the Batterskull, and we'll be able to get in for 3 in the air with the Elite Spellbinder. Now, of consideration is our opponent does have the Rex Sage in hand, so if we play the Batterskull, our opponent's likely going to play the Rex Sage to blow it up. Balance looking really bad in our hand right now. We draw a Scrub Land for turn. Again, not flashing in the Batterskull because they have the Rex Sage, but we'll get in for 3 in the air. In terms of plays, we do have the Blade Spicer, but it doesn't really do much against this board. I probably should have played it, as it could have been a Rex Sage target for the Golem. So that was probably a misplay. Our opponent has infinite mana, but it also natural orders, and then decides to natural order again for the Terastodon, blowing up all of our lands. Now, I do float mana in response. Again, I think I should flash in the Batterskull here with the floated mana, even though they can just play the Rex Sage, but I'm not sure. Maybe, I guess that's why I don't, because of the Rex Sage in hand. So they give us 3 3/3s and no lands, which when they're at 9 and I have a flyer, I'm kind of happy with that, to be honest. So we're going to tap, draw mana, not going to do a lot here. We do have Condemn, but I don't really want to condemn the Terastodon because then they're going to gain 9 life. And right now we got them on a 3-turn clock, and that's our game plan, is to just kill them in the air. So the only green creature that really gets them out of this well right now is Elder Gargaroth. So I'm hoping that doesn't hit the board. They do play their 7th land and flip their Nissa. But again, Nissa, this Planeswalker is not that impactful. They make a 4/4 token. which doesn't do anything on this board. They recognize they're dead in the air in the next 2 turns and decide to call it early, and we go to sideboarding. So against this opponent, seeing Natural Order, Containment Priest is kind of a blowout. I'm looking at taking out Lingering Souls, even though I'm like, they're flyers. We just won with a flyer. So actually, let's take out the Blade Splicer. Showing the Wall of Roots, Blade Splicer is not a great card to have in this matchup. Looking at our hand, we have no white source, so kind of punished with Mutavault there. So we do ship that one back. This one seems okay. We have the Stoneforge Mystic, so we punt the Batterskull back to our deck since we're just going to search it right back up. So our decision is whether or not we want to lead with Stoneforge Mystic or Dark Confidant. However, when they play a Arbor Elf on turn 1, I am happy to kill it with Bloodchief's Thirst. So for turn 2, I want to get some card draw going. So we get Dark Confidant to hit the board and pass to our opponent. Bob's going to get us some great value here. Happy to draw that Dismember since we can take care of some other threats that they'll have. And then it's the decision between either Lingering Souls and Stoneforge Mystic. But I do decide to get the Stoneforge Mystic out just so I can hold up Dismember for this next turn. Bob gets in there for 2. Our opponent, again, just passes with no plays, which is pretty weird for a green deck. We draw a Condemn and a Balance. Again, Balance not looking great on this board. Probably should consider siding it out in this matchup. So, little punt there. Should have attacked with the Stoneforge Mystic. I was considering flashing in the Batterskull, but chose not to take that line, so definitely a punt. Instead, we'll play the Lingering Souls and get some more flyers on the board. But then our opponent just gives up, so that was kind of a non-game. Okay, here we are in game 3. Our opening hand, we are on the draw. Our opening hand is a little light on action, but I will keep it. The Kitesail Freebooter will be able to disrupt our opponent a little bit. Our opponent opens up with Usher of the Fallen, a pretty aggressive white card. I'm very happy to draw the Shriekmaw here. We'll get our Verdant Catacombs down and fetch out our Scrubland and play Mom for turn. Our opponent shows us that they're 2 colors with an Inspiring Vantage. They attack with the Usher. I'm kind of expecting them just to boast here. We obviously do not block. Take 2. And then our opponent decides to get a young Pyromancer down. So for our next turn, we have the option to either evoke our Shriekmaw or play our Kitesail Freebooter. I want to see what's going on in our opponent's hand. If I can take an instant or sorcery, then the young Peasy doesn't really do much. And they show that they do have a Flame Spill in hand and a Kroxa. So I'm happy to steal the Flame Spill. Glad I took it. And our opponent really does not have much going on for the following turn. We got plenty of cards we can bin to the Kroxa, and they don't have anything in the graveyard, so I'm not worried about it being escaped anytime soon. Our opponent plays their top land. I do expect them to attack with Usher the Fallen. They don't, probably because Mom can protect it, and we draw planes for our 3rd turn. So, do we Skyclave Apparition or not is really the question. We decide to, and the question is, what do we want to take? And our opponent just gives up, which was interesting because, who knows what they were going to draw next turn. They could have drawn a burn spell, but I guess they didn't like having a face down Mom. So we'll go to sideboarding and take that one. Our opponent showed us some cheap creatures, so I'm happy to put Bloodchief's Thirst in. Sideboard out Ravages of War, just really not my jam. I'm not a huge fan of Ravages of War. Again, I stare at the Library of Alexandria that should be in the deck. Bad deck building there, chill. Didn't see any artifacts, so I take out Cathar, but then put it back in. I do like the flash mode for Cathar over the Leonin Relic Warder, and that's the final change. So we're on the draw this time. We have all of our colors of mana. We do have Mana Tithe, so Definitely going to keep this one. Our opponent leads on Mountain and plays a Figure of Destiny. Would have loved to mana tithe that one, but we do have Shriekmaw in hand to deal with it. Draw a hero for turn, and now the decision is, do we want to play Mom or hold up Mana Tithe? I decided to hold up Mana Tithe. Not necessarily the best play. 2 drops aren't that scary in a red-white deck. We probably should have gotten Mom on board. Our opponent attacks with the Figure, and they do decide to level it up to a 2/2. So our opponent is 3 colors, which we know because they had Croxa, so they play their Swamp and pass the turn. So again, should have played Mother Runes first turn. The Mana Tithe did nothing that turn. Our Verdant Catacombs can only fetch black now since we have the Scrub land in our hand. And then not sure why I do not play the Mother of Runes here during this turn. That was definitely a mistake. I figure I just want to definitely hold up Mana Tithe still, but we could have gotten the Mother on the board. Happy to Mana Tithe the Duretti. Duretti is a problem, and there's the power of Mana Tithe. So got some loose play on our end for sure, but so far we are not being incredibly punished by it. We draw a Swamp for turn, play our Verdant Catacombs, go fetching, can only get another Swamp. Now we play our Mom a turn late, and we do have the Shriekmaw ready to evoke. If our opponent played a 3rd red source, they could level up their Figure again, so I decided to get the Figure off the battlefield. Next turn with 4 mana, we're 100% planning on slamming the hero and seeing how our opponent deals with that. So our opponent does have a 4 mana play. They play their Sacred Foundry untapped, taking 2. Play their own Mother of Runes, which is interesting. And then pass the turn. So they needed that white source. We draw a Mox Sapphire. Doesn't do a lot here. We could play the Batter Skull, but I'd rather get the hero online as the hero represents a pretty significant clock. Our opponent plays their 5th land and then finds Giver of Ruins, which does give protection, against colorless creatures. So they got a lot of protection going on over there. But this hero is going to be able to put in some work just making bodies. Even though they can block it, they can't trade with it at this point. Really would have loved to have gotten a white source there, as our Intrepid Adversary could have leveled up, put 2 level counters on it, or 2 counters on it. We didn't, so we can only play our Intrepid Adversary with 1 counter on it if we want to. So because of that, I plan to get the Batter Skull online, and then hopefully we can draw a white source next turn to play our Intrepid Adversary with 2 counters. We go to attacks, they block, they give protection to their giver. They still take a decent amount of damage. So our opponent has no plays. They're on 5 lands. Oh, never mind. Our opponent has 6 lands with a port. And unfortunately, they get down an Inferno Titan, which can do a decent amount of work on this board. So our game plan right now is trying to figure out some way to race our opponent. Our opponent doesn't have any really good kills here. We're going to be able to protect our Mom, which is fine. They do deal a damage to us and one of our soldier tokens. Now, with a white source, we'll be able to pump up all of our creatures +2/+2. We also have the Battle Cry effect on the hero, which is pertinent here to get our Phyrexian, to get our Batter Skull up to 6 damage. We don't find the white source, but so our only play is to play the adversary here and level it up 1 time. Want to make sure I don't misclick here to make sure we do get the level counter on it. And then it's the time for attacks. Unfortunately, since we couldn't level it up twice, our hero cannot attack through the Inferno Titan, but we do have Mom to protect it. And our soldier tokens are pumped by the adversary counter. So we are getting in for a lot of damage right here. And our opponent needs to figure out how to deal with it. Really happy to have the lifelink on the Batterskull, because that is puts us in favor of the race. So our opponent decides to block the hero, which is expected. They block the Batterskull, and then leave one of the soldier tokens unblocked. So I'm definitely going to give my hero pro red here. And I expect them to give Mom pro black, and then to give their Giver of Runes pro white. But we're still able to get through for a decent amount of damage. Very interesting protection game going on right now. For some reason, they choose not to protect their Giver of Runes, probably because they don't know what I have in my hand. I could be representing a kill spell to kill their Mom, which would definitely, or to kill their Inferno Titan, which would definitely put them behind. So with the Intrepid Adversary out, I'm pretty glad that everything's given a +1/+1, because their Inferno Titan can only kill one creature right now. Now, if they do kill the adversary and put a point of damage on something else, then they can kill 2 creatures, and that's probably how they should split up their damage. They play Showdown of the Skulls, and on this board, the Sulfuric Vortex really isn't going to do anything, so that's a dead card. They're just able to play their Young Peasy as it is right now. They get in with the Inferno Titan, and I'm anxious to see how they split up the damage. So they do it correctly. They will kill our Mom, and they will kill the adversary. But they are tapped here for their Inferno Titan, which means their Inferno Titan can't block. Can we get there with enough damage with our hero of Bladehold? So we take 6 from the Inferno Titan. And our opponent passes the turn to us. Elite Spellbinder, fine to draw, but our opponent does only have 1 card in hand, so I'm guessing they're holding a land as well. We're going to get to attacks, make sure we stack our counters appropriately on the hero. And then I'm trying to determine whether or not I need to leave back a blocker or not. So the Inferno Titan can kill the blocker with its effect. So I'm really actually leaning to just let's get aggressive and win this race, specifically since we have lifelink. Our opponent will not be able to kill us next turn. And we are attacking with a lot of damage. Not a lot of great blocks here. I think they do have to block with both creatures, which means they'll either be losing their Mom or their Young Peasy. So Mom protects herself, the Young Peasy will die, we'll gain 5 life, and our opponent will take 8. It's curious that potentially they could have given the Young Peasy protection, and I would not have gained any life from that point, and then they may have been able to win on the crack back. Potentially. So they do have a Goblin Ravelmaster in hand, which we will exile. They can play the Ravelmaster if they want to. Looking at the cards that our opponent has with the Showdown, Siege Gang would be their best play, though it's a little slow. Avalanche Riders doesn't really do much on this board, and Sulfuric Vortex is definitely a non-play since they're at 2 life. So they agree, they play the Siege Gang. They want to get out as many blockers as possible. Our opponent is kind of forced to attack right now because they need to kill the Elite Spellbinder, which represents lethal in the air. However, next turn we're going to have 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 attackers. They're going to hit us for probably 9 damage right now. We'll be at 4. And they just will not have enough blockers to gain any life. So they choose not to attack the Spellbinder. It really doesn't matter in the end because we were going to have more attackers than they could deal with. So we're able to just win this one through attrition by winning the race with the lifelink on the Batterskull and just the amount of sheer bodies that the Bladehold can pump out each attack. Our opponent sees that, and we win the match. And with that, we win the trophy. So that was the matches. Some quick games. It was our third trophy of the season out of 6 leagues. Our record's doing really well here with an 83% match win rate. Really like playing the white-black deck. I think it's really strong. And it was a pleasure to draft. So let me know how you would have drafted it differently. Maybe you would have gone with a white-blue style deck, and I'm sure you would have also included Library of Alexandria in your starting 40. Anyways, thanks for watching the games here and chilling out with me, and I'll see you next time.